Tonight, we're here to talk about Chris Madel, Republican gubernatorial candidate that was running for governor of Minnesota, right? So here we got the backdrop right here. He's not a national figure. He's only known within the state of Minnesota. As far as being a national figure, he's far from a national figure. But information, some background information about this guy, right? So Chris Madel is a Minneapolis-based attorney with a background in law enforcement, defense, and white-collar criminal cases. He grew up in Waseca, Minnesota, where his father served as chairman of the local Republican Party, exposing him early to conservative politics, right? So this guy is already groomed to be someone to run for public office, state senate, state congress, professionally. Madel previously worked as a trial attorney in the U.S. Department of Justice's antitrust division and has represented high-profile clients, including Minnesota State Patrol officer Ryan Londregan, whose murder and manslaughter charges were dropped after 2023 shooting of Ricky Cobb II. Baseball player Kirby Puckett, acquitted of felony charges in 2003, and more recently, the ICE officer involved in the fatal shooting of Renee Macklin Good. He also serves as counsel for the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association and the conservative news outlet Alpha News. Madel's former political involvement appears limited to a brief run for office to be the governor of the state of Minnesota. On December 1st, 2025, he announced his candidacy for Republican nomination for governor of Minnesota in the 2026 election, positioning himself as a candidate to fight crime, support the police, defend free speech, eliminate fraud, and deliver the change Minnesota desperately needs. He criticized Democratic Governor Tim Walz's leadership as having allowed the state to be bled dry by special interest fraudsters and ran a people powered campaign that rejected donations from corporate PACs, unions, and lobbyists. However, Madel abruptly ended his campaign on January 26, 2026, in an 11-minute video posted on X, the platform that most hated Elon Musk owns. He cited his opposition to ICE's Operation Metro Surge, an immigration enforcement effort in Minneapolis he initially supported but later called unmitigated disaster for expanding beyond targeting the worst of the worst and instilling fear among U.S. citizens, particularly people of color, who felt compelled to carry proof of citizenship. Madel stated that he could no longer support National Republicans' stated retribution on the citizens of our state and disavowed his membership in the party over the issue. No prior elected officers or other political campaigns are documented in available records as it pertains to Chris Madel. This is what some comments that Chris made concerning his stepping down from aspiring to be the next Minnesota governor. Takes a lot of guts and glory to admit that you're scared. But let's uh let's play the video for you.
I love Minnesota. I was born and raised here. My immediate family lives here. My extended family lives here. It's my home. I decided to run for governor because I firmly believe that Minnesota needs serious and systemic change. Fraud is rampant. Our streets are unsafe. We need to honor and respect law enforcement much more. Our education results lag behind Mississippi. Our taxes are absurdly high, and we're losing great businesses and people because of those taxes and ever-increasing regulations. I believe Minnesota has seriously lost its way. Since I announced my candidacy on December 1, I am extremely proud of what we've accomplished. I started as a relative unknown candidate and emerged as a leading Republican contender in less than 2 months. Honestly, we've accomplished more in less than 2 months than I ever dreamed possible, and I cannot thank my friends and supporters enough for getting me here. You've been there for me, and I will forever be grateful. But today, I announced the end of my campaign. I have 2 primary reasons for this decision. Number 1, I cannot support the National Republican's stated retribution on the citizens of our state, nor can I count myself a member of a party that would do so. I support the originally stated goals of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement's Operation Metro Surge in locating and deporting the worst of the worst from our state. And I've seen many examples of ICE arresting non-U.S. citizens in Minnesota convicted of serious crimes, including murder, rape, and child sexual assault. No reasonable person should want these people here, and I am glad that they are gone. But Operation Metro Surge has expanded far beyond its stated focus on true public safety threats. United States citizens, particularly those of color, live in fear. United States citizens are carrying papers to prove their citizenship. That's wrong. ICE has authorized its agents to raid homes using a civil warrant that need only be signed by a Border Patrol agent. That's unconstitutional, and it's wrong. Weaponizing criminal investigations against political opponents is unconstitutional, regardless of who is in power. Republicans and Democrats alike have engaged in this misconduct, and both must be held to the same standard. They need to do better. And I have read about and I have spoken to countless United States citizens who have been detained in Minnesota due to the color of their skin. I personally have spoken to several law enforcement officers, some Hispanic and some Asian, who have been pulled over by ICE on pretextual stops. Driving while Hispanic is not a crime. Either is driving while Asian. At the end of the day, I have to look my daughters in the eye and tell them I believe I did what was right. And I am doing. Either is driving while Asian.
Well, neither is driving while black. You forgot to put that in there, Mr. Sir.
At the end of the day, I have to look my daughters in the eye and tell them I believe I did what was right. And I am doing that today. Now, the second reason I'm ending my campaign is that I am, above all else, a pragmatist. And the reality is that the National Republicans have made it nearly impossible for a Republican to win a statewide election in Minnesota. It is a simple fact. And I want to make clear that I believe many unfairly do not provide the president with nearly enough credit for some of the things he has done for our country. For example, I watched as many protested Israel's treatment of Gazans and called for a ceasefire. I watched with disbelief and dismay when several of our educational institutions, including the University of Minnesota and my alma mater, Macalester College, did little to nothing to ensure the safety of Jewish students throughout that process. But when the president obtained an historic ceasefire, these pro-Gaza protesters went completely silent. I've also been listening to presidents since the 1980s complain that NATO countries are not paying their agreed-upon share of defense spending. The president is the first to induce NATO countries to increase their defense spending as a percentage of their respective GDPs so the United States doesn't have to. The president has also signed the Bipartisan Take It Down Act in May of 2025, the Bipartisan Medal of Honor Act in December of 25, and just in this month, he signed bipartisan funding of resources for public safety energy independence, national security, and environmental stewardship. Plus, in the past week, he proposed capping credit card interest rates at 10% for a year. Even Bernie Sanders seems to like that idea. Now, with that said, Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota has been an unmitigated disaster. Make no mistake, Republicans in our state have also screwed up. Minnesota House Republican leadership, including 2 of the Republican candidates for governor, have done nothing to properly investigate Minnesota fraud. Instead, they've chosen to write strongly worded letters to people and ask the federal government to do their jobs. They've asked for a new bureaucrat, an inspector general, to come in. The remedy for bad government is not more government. We need to do better in this state and not have to rely on a YouTuber in order to ferret out fraud in our state. Our government has failed us, Republicans and Democrats. Now, I'm not withdrawing my candidacy because of any existing or new entrant in the race, and that includes Senator Klobuchar. Truth be told, I beat her in the courtroom, and if this trajectory continues in my campaign, and if Minnesota was not being substantially impacted by Washington, D.C., I believe I would have beat her at the ballot box. I've built a career frequently representing the underdog. I have placed my reputation on the line time and time again for my clients. I truly love being a lawyer. It provides you with the forum to stand up for those that need help. Whether it's representing the hero trooper Ryan Londregan, a Somali teenager alleged to have tweeted threats to a federal prosecutor, Liz Collin, or Alpha News, I have repeatedly stood up to defend our great nation's constitutional protections, even when many said it would hurt my business or my career. This month, I helped the ICE agent Jonathan Ross fill out a form to obtain U.S. Department of Justice legal representation if he's ever sued or charged with a crime. I did this just like I have helped hundreds of other people find good lawyers, including on immigration matters. I do this because I believe the constitutional right to counsel is sacrosanct, and it is indispensable to protecting individual liberty against the overwhelming power of the government. True Americans love justice. Justice requires excellent legal representation. After ICE released my name to the media and said that I was helping Agent Ross, I was honored to receive communications from dozens of attorneys that congratulated me for helping a person in need, particularly during a gubernatorial campaign. But 3 lawyers publicly criticized me for helping Agent Ross. As lawyers, we take an oath to uphold the United States and Minnesota state constitutions. These 3 lawyers betrayed that oath. History crowns the courageous and condemns the mob. These lawyers chose the mob. I am proud to continue the great tradition of President John Adams. Criminal defense lawyers, including the brave federal and state public defenders across our great state. President Adams and these lawyers should be counted as champions of our Constitution and the rule of law. One of my most favorite questions to ask my conservative friends who say denigrating things about criminal defense lawyers, including public defenders, is to ask this. If Jesus Christ were walking the earth today, would he be a prosecutor or a public defender? We all know the answer.
Well, we don't all know the answer, all right? My answer would be both, because I think Jesus Christ would prosecute and condemn people who, despite the word and despite evidence that, if Jesus Christ was walking the earth today, those people probably would not recognize that individual, so they will continue their lives as they have continued them at the status quo. For those who would recognize Jesus Christ, not just upon sight, but just like the feeling, the vibe that you get from that person, you never know, man. I mean, he could be here now. He could be within every one of us right now. You never know. It's just what your perspective is at the time that you're considering all of this information. So I believe that Jesus Christ, if he was on this earth today, he would be a defense. He would be both. He will be a defense attorney and a prosecuting attorney, because he will be prosecuting all the people who know that they're doing wrong but choose to do wrong anyway, and he would defend people who may not know that they're doing wrong and need to be shown um extra light, extra curricular activity, something to get their mind right so they can walk right. So I disagree with that portion. I had to interrupt that for me to insert myself and my disbelief on his assumption that he knows what our answer is. He knows he knows what his answer is, but he doesn't know what my answer is.
So today, I end my candidacy as governor of the great state of Minnesota. Believe me, if I could reach into my pocket and pull out the necessary many millions of dollars to run as an independent, I would. But again, reality guides my decision. One final note. I ask all Minnesotans to please do more to respect and thank our state and local law enforcement officers, particularly those in the Minneapolis Police Department. We know that federal immigration operations have led to increased street level activity, community disruptions, and complaints about tactics that affect the public trust. We also know that the governor, the attorney general, and the mayor of Minneapolis have prohibited state and local law enforcement from assisting their federal counterparts, even when those federal law enforcement officers have been physically attacked by agitators. This has created extreme challenges for local police. They have to balance following state orders, maintaining safety and relationships in diverse communities, and navigating the fallout from federal actions occurring within their jurisdictions without full coordination or cooperation. They're stuck between the proverbial rock and a hard place. It is unfair, and our hearts should go out to them. Mine certainly does. Please remember that these cops are the good guys. They're trying to protect you. Please understand and appreciate the difficult circumstances they have been placed. Please thank them for their service. I again want to thank all who have supported me. I will never forget your help, your encouragement, and your service. I will also be returning every penny of the money contributed to my campaign. You should not have to pay for my decision to withdraw. So thank you. God bless you, and God bless Minnesota.
All right, so let me finish writing that thing down. All right, so hey, here's the thing I'll say about that. Right, he was honest to a certain extent, in my opinion. This is my opinion. He was honest to a certain extent. The reasons why he gave for dropping out of the Minnesota gubernatorial race was because he couldn't look his child, he couldn't look his daughters in the eye and say that I support ICE enforcing the law that's already on the books, written into law, signed into law by past presidents. ICE is doing their jobs. So that's number one. You know, listen, this guy, I'm actually surprised that he made this video and the contents of this video is what it is. I think it is Republican leaning. He does play both sides of the fence in his language. He is a lawyer, and I can't help but think that he's using legalese and his skill as a lawyer to kind of weasel out from the Republican Trump brand, which is MAGA, America first. And so you have what we have is someone who was trailing in the polls. He was fourth behind Mike Lindell. Like Mike Lindell is the My Pillow guy that canceled. Not a lot of mainstream media folks know this history about Mike Lindell, but My Pillow used to come on QVC and late night commercials 10, 15, 20 years ago. But then all of a sudden, when Mike Lindell was questioning the results of the 2020 presidential election, where there's now coming to light there was some irregularities that may have affected the county's vote count, where in Fulton County, Georgia, you had 315,000 unsigned, undated voter ballots that favored a Democratic candidate in the name of Joseph Biden. And what you have here is if there was 315,000
I love Minnesota.
um,
I was born and raised here.
cases of irregularities in Fulton County, Georgia, then you 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 have to assume that in other states that the same thing was going on in those states, and Republicans control the state of Georgia. At least they have a Republican governor who is a Republican in name only and tends to bend the knee to Democratic policy, such as walking a president of the United States, number 45, President Trump, has never been done before in the history of America. But Fulton County, Georgia is written down in history for conducting that disgusting lawfare. So when you look at the state of Arizona, where Republicans love to vote the day of the election, Republicans don't like to early vote. They don't like because early voting for us is like, oh wow, is my vote really going to count? There's a doubt there. But if you vote on the day, then we feel a little better about that. But we've recently taken early voting more seriously, which is the reason why we've done very well during the 2024 presidential election. We got President Donald Trump back into the White House, and he is implementing his policies that he spoke about during the 2024 presidential campaign. I like what I voted for. We need to tone down the rhetoric in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in my opinion. Um, I'm glad that Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota had a conversation with the President of the United States to negotiate a more peaceful transaction between prisons and the jails that contain criminal illegal aliens, how they could more peacefully turn them over from the jails and the prison into ICE custody to avoid street confrontations from protesters. And allegedly, these are paid protesters. And so I, you know, I just don't think that Chris Madel had the intestinal fortitude to withstand many things. One, he's a Republican trying to tag along with the MAGA brand, but he's in a Democratic state that hasn't elected a Republican governor in 15, 20 years. And so he listed reasons why he withdrew from the gubernatorial race in Minnesota. But here are my takeaways. He won't accept the MAGA brand. I think he's just too weak. He's too weak. Because if he accepted the MAGA brand, which he kind of halfway wants to, but he's doing the lawyer stuff. So he's got one butt cheek on one side of the fence and the other on the other side. Number two reason why I believe he dropped out of the gubernatorial race in Minnesota is because he couldn't win. He couldn't win. He was fourth behind Mike Lindell. He lagged behind in the polls, plain and simple. And then he wants to hide behind not having enough money to run as an independent. As if that would have made a difference. It wouldn't have made a difference. But I do commend him for respecting law enforcement, respecting the Trump administration to highlight some of the wins that President Trump has experienced within this first full year of his second administration. Chris Madel is returning 100%, according to him, he's returning 100% of campaign funding that he didn't spend back to his donors. That's what being a responsible individual looks like. That's what being a responsible individual looks like. But if Chris Madel decided to stay in the race, he would have had to fight against Mike Lindell. He is a formidable opponent in that pool of candidates for the Republican gubernatorial race. Chris Mandel's brief campaign for the 2026 Minnesota Republican gubernatorial nomination from December 1st, 2025 to January 26, 2026 did not yield any public available polling data, a hypothetical, right? General election matchups against Democrat incumbents like Tim Walz or potential challengers such as Amy Klobuchar. Short duration likely precluded inclusion in major surveys, which focused on other Republicans. Or so he wasn't even a top contender, right? Because Chris Madel's campaign for the 2026 Minnesota Republican gubernatorial nomination was brief, lasting from December 1st, 2025 to January 26, 2026, which limited the available polling data. So he wasn't even relevant in terms of polling. And here you see, here I see that Chris Madel was fourth behind Mike Lindell, and then the top two candidates are Kendall Qualls and Lisa DeMuth, which are they're polling pretty nicely. But I gotta say that his chances of winning was next to nil. Next to nil. On top of he wouldn't accept the MAGA brand. That means that he didn't want to have the intestinal fortitude to withstand the criticism behind standing with Trump. He couldn't win. He was too behind in the poll. His consultants was telling him this. This was a major failure on his part, because I do believe that if he would have stuck in there and ran an honest campaign, he probably would have lost, but he could have linked up with Mike Lindell if he won, or Kendall Falls, or Visa the Move, been part of their cabinet within the state of Minnesota to make change. And maybe that is his plan. I don't know. I hope it is. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And I really do appreciate your patronage. I've done my best to describe who this individual was. I just don't think that he had the intestinal fortitude to stay in the race, obviously. But then if he would have came out as the winner, um, would he have had the intestinal fortitude to stand up to the radical left that controls the state? So I don't know. He probably would have been a Rhino or Republican in name only. But I do wish the best for this young man, and I really appreciate his 3/4 honesty on why he really quit. I went over why I think he really quit, and let me know what you think. Like, share, and subscribe this video, so we could break the YouTube algorithm to reach more viewers with this content. Thank you very much, and I'll see you